Recording in progress.
Welcome, everyone, to the select board meeting for October 1st, 2024. Beginning to look like October out there, but it sure, the weather's been pretty good. We're gonna do the Pledge of Allegiance first, so we'll all rise. Greg, if you would be so kind as to lead us. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Miss Sylvia. Yeah, it's been a long time. Is Sylvia okay?
She called today.
What's that?
She called today.
Oh, okay,
Yeah.
good. Okay. She hasn't been there for a long time. Now it's time we will accept public comments. If anyone has anything that they want to talk about that's not on the agenda for today, now would be the time to do it. Carl, welcome.
I want to give you a little package about a workshop that's coming up next Thursday. Thermal Energy Networks. Anybody running like one? Do this.
Carl, you might want to just step up to the microphone and announce that again.
Oh, yeah.
Sure.
As you know, I'm Carl Buckholt, the chair of the Energy Committee. We're sponsoring this workshop next Thursday at the library,
Is that this coming Thursday or next week?
10th, a week from Thursday. As you know, you've been watching the news. Asheville, North Carolina got devastated. I have a personal friend there, a fellow named Forrest Green, who was in a men's group with Heidi's father for 12 years. And he texted me, devastated down there. We have been lucky here so far. We dodged a bullet with Irene last July, this July, but it's inevitable. The climate crises are going to be worse and worse. So, sum it up quickly, I think we need to do two things simultaneously, which is each of us individually and as a town do everything possible to mitigate the worst effects and simultaneously prepare for the worst. So this workshop that's putting on with Debbie New, she is amazing. She got the legislature to pass a new law last year that bypasses the state system. If a town or a community like BBA wants to do a thermal energy network, you just need the regular permits. You don't have to go through the PUC. So it streamlines it. This is one of the solutions that will help to mitigate climate change. This is something I never heard about a year ago, but I'm very excited about it now. It's capturing heat, like from Riley Rink. You could theoretically capture the heat from the compressors that give off heat to make the ice and pipe it into this building and use a water source heat pump to heat the building. So it's one of these technologies that it exists. All the components are available. And the larger the scale, the more affordable it is. So Debbie New is the one who's in charge of this Vermont network. She worked with a fellow named Jared Rodriguez. I met with him and Eric Subik at BBA. Eric is the head of maintenance there. This guy, Jared, is a genius. He is so smart at putting things together, figuring out solutions to things. So he and Debbie will be at the library. And I asked Debbie, like, if you want to come, this says 5 to 7. I said, look, give me a presentation in 1 hour, 5 to 6, so people can come, they can go home, 6 o'clock if they want to have dinner. She'll sum it up way better than I can. And then hopefully Eric Subik, other engineers, architects, HVAC people like Greg Christensen, they can ask very specific questions of Jared after the presentation. So I just urge you all, please, to come. I'm going to make, a pitch to the planning commission also. And Jonathan and the housing committee also. I mean, this is the type of project that you'll see if you read these things. The more buildings that are involved, the more you can capture the heat that's just wasted and use it to, rather than burning fossil fuel. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Carl. For those of you that just came in, we're under public comments. This would be the time, if you have something that you want to bring up that's not on the agenda, this would be the time to do so. Anybody want to talk about anything else? Not seeing anything? We'll get into the agenda. Approval of the minutes from September 7th.
Move to approve minutes from September 17th.
Is there a second? Second. Moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
The minutes are approved. The next agenda item is to possibly select a new road name for the project near RK Miles. I have a question on this, before we get into the discussion even. Does Skunk Hollow Road no longer exist? It was a town road that it was a town right of way / road that went right up through there from Route 11 and 30 by RK Miles and came out on Elm Street Extension.
So, I mean, according to the E911, one guy in the state, Tyler Hermanson, he said that we don't have a skunk.
Yeah, I saw
Anything.
that.
Yeah.
I saw that. And
So it
because
doesn't
those of us,
exist.
I mean, you remember Skunk Hollow Road, several people that are here. It's, yeah, and the trails, I mean, the path is still there, isn't it?
Yeah.
And that's a town road, as I understand it. It's not maintained as a class 4.
Class 4. Class 4 doesn't necessarily have to have names.
Would that?
Historically, there's never been a sign, but it's always been Skunk Hollow Road. Yeah, Mike.
Is it on the highway minute?
It's not, apparently not.
Would that impede the naming of it that? Because I know if it's like ancient road type scenario.
Well, if we have a Skunk Hollow Road, we're gonna have a hard time naming one Skunk Hollow Drive or whatever it was.
He recommended not using the word hollow in the road name,
Okay.
only because it could be confused with Sleepy Hollow Drive.
Yeah, every town has a main street. I mean, they talk about you don't want to name something the same name as the towns that are around you, but we share a lot of names. There's a lot of hollows.
It's not much of a hollow. It's three buildings in a short period of drive. It's more of a
But I think
lane.
that was
could be
probably giving some reference to Skunk Hollow Road, which
I actually used to think that Skunk Hollow Road was what we now call Elm Street Extension. Which actually.
is that true, Chris? Do you agree with that?
Do I agree?
No, I'm talking to Chris.
Naming that road that?
No, I did. Do you think Elm Street Extension was used to be called Skunk Hollow Road?
I still call it Skunk Hollow.
Okay, Elm Street Extension itself, but there's a path that comes down.
I know the road.
The road was never used. I mean, I grew up in Paramount,
Yeah,
I lived there. And it was never, to my knowledge, it was never used. I can never remember it being used. Only.
Yeah.
Vehicles.
right. We used to do there, but
Down
yeah.
It was always mine.
Apparently I didn't remember, I mean, I didn't remember that all being Skunk Hollow Road. So if that was true and we renamed it Elm Street Extension, which probably wouldn't be allowed today because we already have an Elm Street. Too similar. Then maybe Skunk Hollow Road no longer exists.
Who comes up with the name? You guys?
Me. Yeah, if there's a new road or a new development, people there's a whole process and procedure that we go through. We asked for three possibilities like, well, Paul's development, called Della Street. I mean, that, we had three different potentials and I just loved it because of the Perry Mason affiliation and the fact that Della, Kilburn and Dee lived there. Thought that was a great reminder of some of the history of that. I mean, to go back farther in history, we would have had to have done a Fowler or something, but there's already a Fowler Hill Road. Fowler Hill used to be the hill on Highland Avenue, as you know, because you live right in that neighborhood.
And then the other suggestion was Purdy Drive.
Yeah, we have a Purdy Hill south of town. How many people, I mean, these guys know that, so.
Well, Michael Casey Road.
Yeah.
That wasn't,
Casey Drive.
that wasn't one of the suggestions that we received, but anyways,
Name and what you want.
the two that we received were
Hollow Lane, Purdy Drive.
Purdy.
Or Purdy Lane.
Purdy Lane.
We kind of like that one.
Is it really that?
It rolled off the tongue.
How are you spelling Purdy?
URDY, like the shoe store.
I mean, there is historically a Purdy Hill south of town on,
What's the connection of Purdy to that road?
that's a good question. I don't know. Was there a Purdy?
I don't know where these came from.
You should know.
I mean, I had a great grandfather who was named Purdy, but he didn't live there. He lived on Elm Street. So.
Oh, really? Does somebody remember that?
BMW Drive.
But we digress.
Well, we don't digress. I mean,
Need a name.
you know what? I'm good with either one of them. If we don't have a Skunk Hollow Road anymore, I would like to.
I think it should be Skunk Hollow.
Yeah.
But just because Purdy, I think that's confusing. Purdy Hill is Purdy Hill.
Yeah.
I wouldn't want
Oh, you
to
live
put Purdy, yeah, we live across the street from the Thomas Purdy Building,
Right.
1764,
There's no
Yeah.
building.
which is now in at Hornsby Hill.
There's nothing in our reference as far as emergency service.
No, I know that.
Nothing's referred to that.
Yeah, there's no road named Purdy Hill, but Purdy Hill is a fairly well-known hill in town. I mean, it's a.
I think it would confuse the Purdy issue. It's already confusing enough. Hornsby Hill,
That's
Purdy.
well, that's actually, I just saw that there's a Thompson Purdy room at the Ormsby Hill.
Yeah.
What about Skunk Hill?
It does, it is on an incline.
That's,
It's really not a hollow, is it?
No, it's not.
it's not like Dorset, no.
I like Skunk Hill.
What's the other?
What about Skunk Mound?
It's not going to enhance the property values.
Well, no, yeah, I'm wondering why would you want it to be named Skunk anything? It,
People are the first road to see coming into town.
Good, very good point.
That doesn't bother me. Okay, what do you want to do, guys?
I don't have an opinion. Which is rare.
Let me get back. I didn't, we didn't get the whole conversation in the
No, it's.
emails.
yeah, the email just had the backgrounder.
Yeah, there's no conflicts for Purdy and there's no conflicts for Skunk.
The first email says,
We have a Sleepy Hollow Drive?
We do. It's on off of Wide Awake.
Okay, yeah.
It's where
yeah.
Carl lives.
If you go with Skunk, he'd prefer to have it called Lane or Court. We do have a courthouse.
Skunk Hill, that's not good. I
So,
don't think.
what Peter had told the applicant was that, the name would be either Skunk Hollow Drive or Purdy Drive. But that doesn't, I mean, but that has no,
Lane or Drive.
In this email chain, it says
It's the highlighted part if you go down.
in the highlighted part right there. It says the
got it,
name will be
yeah.
either Skunk Hollow Drive or Purdy Drive. We'll let you know.
Well, now I'm thinking, since everybody thinks of that as Ormsby Hill and Purdy doesn't get a lot of attention, maybe we go with Purdy Drive. But
But why Purdy?
that'll keep the name Purdy alive.
Why not Smith?
I like Smith.
Well,
We haven't,
they proposed pretty.
Yeah.
I mean,
They proposed Purdy. So
so.
I think, I agree. Skunk, as you drive into town, is probably not just perfect.
awesome.
Roadkill. Roadkill Drive? That's not bad.
I don't know. When I was a kid riding my bicycle down that path called Skunk Hollow Road, that I have fond memories of that. I like the Skunk Hollow reference. So
Do we have a Fox Hollow?
But they didn't ask for Fox. They asked for.
We can
Skunk.
name it anything we want.
No, but you don't.
But we should.
I think Purdy Drive is fine. Keeps the Purdy name alive, and if people ask why, you can say it was because there was a hill that nobody
Well,
calls
there
it
was a Purdy, there was a Purdy that lived right
No, there's
near there.
yeah, up there. Oh, no, I know that. But my point is, if you have a Purdy Drive, you can say that's keeping the Purdy name
So
going.
is that a motion that you're making?
That is a motion, actually. I'd like to make a motion, Mr. Chairman, to call it Purdy Drive.
Second.
Ooh,
Oh, moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 I'm gonna say no.
History will.
And I'm overruled. It's named Purdy Drive. Is that one of the highlighted things we had?
Yes, it is.
Yes, it is. Okay. Huh, I wonder if somebody can get back just for the interest of putting closure on this with what is the historical reference? Purdy.
I know.
Maybe it's
Maybe it's irrelevant.
maybe it's the right name. Or yeah, it could be right.
Yeah.
Okay. We spent way too much time on that.
No, we didn't. We spent just the right amount of time.
Get back into my.
We almost wound up with a skunk something right on Main Street.
Are we done with that?
We're done with that. We're done. We're moving on to Chrissy Haskins,
Chrissy.
Train Group.
Welcome. Chrissy Haskins is here of Dufrain Group. We're talking about an engineering report for a possible sewer extension on Richville Road.
All right, so I have a quick 5-minute summary for you.
Good.
So we prepared a study to evaluate the feasibility of extending municipal sewer on Richville Road south from Natural Form Way to Cass Terrace to serve properties along Richville and the side streets. Many of these properties and their associated on-site wastewater disposal systems are within the town source protection area for the municipal water supplies. Septic systems in this area are typically older and are grandfathered in regard to wastewater permitting, meaning that they may not meet today's full regulatory requirements. The need for this extension is really focused on protecting the town's water supplies. However, there is a secondary need or benefit that we identified in the report to support development of the properties around the airport. With this in mind, we included an additional 50,000 gallons of future growth in the sizing of our alternatives. And that's on top of the existing demand from the existing customers served by the Green Mountain Pump Station and the projected demand for the customers that would be along Richville Road and the side streets. We evaluated 4 main alternatives, 3 of which had varying collection system alternatives. So that's a total of 7 different alternatives. The main alternatives, the 4 main, focused on the number of pump stations and where these pump stations would be located. They went from one alternative had 1 pump station and they went 2, 3, and 4 up to 4 pump stations. And that's because of the topography along Richville Road, basically south of Airport Road. Collection would require multiple pump stations. It's just very flat through that area. And if you only have, the fewer pump stations you have, the more gravity and force mains you have paralleling each other, meaning that we have a gravity main running south and a force main directly next to it running back north. We used a life cycle cost evaluation combined with a non-economic evaluation to identify the best alternative. When we initially did this, it did not result in a single alternative rising to the top. It's the first time that's ever happened to me. So we came back and met with the town staff, Scott and Eric, and reviewed the alternative or the evaluation with them and obtained some feedback from Eric on his preferences. Eric preferred to minimize the number of pump stations. So that was a local preference that we added in. We went back and added that into our evaluation, redid our evaluation, and that resulted in, I think, 2 alternatives rising to the top. And again, we went with the one with the fewer pump stations. So the recommended alternative would consist of a single pump station located at a low point, which would be north of Cass Terrace. Collection would be gravity from the existing pump station on Natural Form Way, the Green Mountain pump station, with that pump station being eliminated. Continuing gravity from that point south along Richville to the new pump station. Side street collection on Airport Road, Carlin Street, Lybrook, and Cass Terrace. And then from the pump station, we'd have a force main extending back north parallel to that gravity main to a point south of Airport Road where we cross the river over to the treatment facility, the headworks at the wastewater treatment plant. So I am obviously leaving out a lot of detail on the alternatives and the evaluations. It's all in the report for anybody who's interested, and I'm happy to answer questions. The full build out cost of that recommended alternative is just over 6.6 million, which includes construction, a 25% contingency, design and construction engineering, legal and administrative costs. There would also be a slight increase in the operation and maintenance costs because of the new pump station and just a longer length of gravity main to be flushing. With no grant funding and assuming there's no special district fees where people in that district would pay more or anything. If we just applied this to the regular sewer fee, the project would increase the user rate by 50%. If we assume $2 million in grants, the user rate would increase by 34%. And this does account for an assumption that all properties that are within that new service area would connect. So we've included them as users. So considering.
Let me just interrupt briefly before I forget. So we included them as users, but did we include connection fees?
That's not including connection fees, no. Considering the high cost of the full build out, we did look at potential phasing options. With the location of the pump station, phase 1 would include a gravity pipe from Natural Form Way to that new pump station north of Cass Terrace with the pump station and the force main back up. Side streets could be constructed later in varying phases. They could be combined or it could be done completely separate in each phase. This would result in a total project cost for a phase 1, so just staying along Richville, of just under 4 million. And that has a user rate increase of 33% with no grant funding or 16% assuming $2 million in grants. And that accounts for the new users associated with that area. So that's less new users than the full build out. Another option could be to leave the existing pump station at Natural Form Way in operation for a longer term and construct a shorter sewer main. So the pump station, the new pump station would still go down at that spot north of Cass Terrace and then extending gravity main up from there. However, for this to have any real cost savings, it may end up leaving out the area of the developable developable properties near the airport. It would also potentially require the town to spend more money on maintaining the existing pump station for a longer term. In terms of funding opportunities, the Clean Water State Revolving Fund program is only providing subsidy right now to disadvantaged communities. So it's unlikely that there's grant money available there. There's also the USDA Rural Development, again, unlikely for grant money because of the town's median household income. There are a couple other opportunities that are grant programs. They have caps though, so that they wouldn't cover a high percentage of the cost. That would be the Community Development Block Grant and the Northern Borders Regional Commission Grant. Both of those max out at $1 million each. And they both require some sort of connection to the project with economic development and or housing. Another option is congressionally directed spending, which is direct appropriation from the federal government. It is highly competitive. You are competing nationwide with that. And most of the projects that are successful there are asking for small portions of the project cost, just to kind of get them over the finish line. So that is a very quick summary of the report, and I'm happy to answer any questions you have, and even via email later.
Just, if we're gonna gravity feed, Green Mountain and everything down to Cass Terrace, how deep does that get?
That's a good question. So if we go to a single pump station that is down near Cass Terrace, the inlet pipe coming into that is 11.5 feet deep. And then your pump station,
Is that below the water table?
very likely.
Yeah.
So then your operating pump station is actually below that. If we had a pump station that was closer to Airport Road, just a little bit south of Airport Road, which is one of the other alternatives, that would be the first point that we come to for a pump station. That is basically directly across from the headworks at the plant. That would be a more reasonable depth of, I think that one was like 6 to 7 feet. And Eric did take that into account when we talked about all of this. We talked about the different depths of what the pipe inverts would be coming into the pump station. And while he acknowledges that it costs more, it's more difficult to construct a deep pump station, it's a little bit more difficult to maintain it. He preferred the one pump station option.
Isn't that within the new aquifer protection area? And,
No, not down at Cass Terrace.
no, the one at Airport Road.
That would be within the source protection area, but it's outside of zone 1, so we can't put it within zone 1.
Zone 2 either.
Oh, I used to know the answer to this. Where does the Green Mountain pump station pump to?
So it pumps from that corner there, it pumps across the road, and then it follows, it kind of curves to the northwest, crosses the river, and then follows the power easement up to Lincoln Ave.
That's what I thought. It goes to Lincoln Avenue pumps.
Correct. So it pumps back up to Lincoln Ave. And then the town pumps it back down again.
It's a lot of money. Did you do any projections as to what the potential build out is of the collection area that we're talking about as far as residential construction?
In terms of how many,
Yeah,
I wasn't sure exactly what sort of potential plans there were. I kind of highlighted that the two properties, the town-owned property and then the private property up by the airport were developable. There may be some other properties down that way that have opportunity as well. But I didn't know how many units or what kind of development it would be, so I didn't get into any of that.
Can you just expand a little bit on Eric's preference for one pump house and then what the difference would be between say, two pump houses or other ones in terms of cost?
Sure. So the preference for one is just that it takes time and it costs money to maintain pump stations. They have to visit them every day. There's electrical costs. They also add risk to a system because now you're depending on something mechanical and electrical to continue working, whereas gravity just works. And so I think that was his thinking behind wanting one pump station versus more than one. If we go, I don't remember off the top of my head exactly what all the depths are, but there were certainly options with multiple pump stations that were not getting so deep on them. And then there's, I can get you more information on this via email, but I did do a breakdown of all the operation and maintenance costs associated with the pump stations and how many there would be. So that's all, there's a section in the report that has operation and maintenance costs that does include operating the number of pump stations for each alternative. And also, it also includes the operator time to visit each pump station on a regular basis.
Just curious on the construction cost estimates for Carlin Street, does that go to the end of the town street or does it progress beyond where it's the private section of Carlin?
So I ran that one all the way to collect all of the houses on Carlin.
Or it goes all the way to
All the way down and around the corner. Yep.
Thank you.
The, from the pump station to the, to Eric's, the head area, we go under the river.
Yes,
We already do that with the pump station now that goes to Lincoln.
correct. Yes, Lincoln Ave crosses the river.
I imagine that's better than, I'm not sure flooding, what would erode that deep to cause any disturbance with.
When we do it, we do it obviously via drilling. We're not going to open cut
Right.
across the Batten Hill. And we make sure when we drill, they are able to figure out how deep they are and we drill well below the river. There's actually state requirements for that, for how deep we have to go.
Yeah, and this whole project is designed to be better for the aquifer protection area than what we currently have, which are systems that could potentially leak into our source.
Not pressurized.
And they're
The,
grandfathered too.
With sewer lines, if a sewer line leaks, you usually get infiltration. You get groundwater coming in rather than sewer going out because it's not a pressured system. As soon as you put in a pump
Then,
and pressurize it, then the reverse is true, as just mentioned.
Right.
So there is an element of risk that goes with that. Most of the people here probably don't remember when the Lincoln Avenue holding tank used to max out, and it could happen quickly. The alarm would go off and you had about 30 minutes to take care of that problem, or we were in deep.
indeed.
Yeah.
I could see it from my bedroom. Growing up.
And of course, the existing pump station down at Green Mountain, we won't have Kenny McGraw anymore to go out there a couple times a week to wade in that.
We also don't have emergency power there at the existing pump station. You do at Lincoln Ave, but not at Green
Yeah.
Mountain. And these cost estimates do include generator.
And I do remember that when the things would back up from the Green Mountain pump station, the first few houses at Green Mountain's estate would have leakage into their basements, which they didn't appreciate. You remember all that? You were part of the team at that point.
Had it fine.
Okay, any other questions for Chrissy on this? And about the availability of grants, I mean, is there a high expectation that we'd be able to get? You kept bringing up the number of a $2 million grant. Is that just something you pulled out of the air or? is there-
Nope, that's assuming that you could get the $1 million from the Community Development Block Grant and $1 million from Northern Borders.
And that would probably be the most we could expect to get from either one of those sources. Is there a potential to get one and not the other?
Yes.
And so, okay, so it's anywhere between 0 and 2 million.
And a little from the feds, maybe.
And, those maximum $1 million grants, it doesn't matter if we do a phased approach at like a $4 million start and then okay, so you'd still get the 2 million regardless if it was the 6 million.
Well,
whole
it's,
project.
without the grants, to me, it's a
Yeah,
no-go.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the CDBG grants are probably more easily attained than Northern Borders.
Northern Borders is highly competitive.
Interesting.
And those grants, those all have a local match and,
Yes, yeah.
and that was figured into your calculation. Would there be an option to create a district down there that would bear more of the burden of putting in the new system than the ratepayers that are already on the system?
Yeah, you can certainly do that. That was actually done for the Main Street extension. And I believe that they're paying the same rate, but you do have the option to do that here. You could do the same thing down there. You could have the vote to create another district.
I mean, to make it clear, they're paying the same rate to connect, but because they're in the district, they pay at the same as you do if you're in the water district, whether you're on the water or not.
Didn't we incentivize connections?
For the first,
Yeah.
first year,
Yeah.
which has gone by now.
Yeah.
And we got,
We got a few signed up.
yeah. Okay, any other questions for Kristen? Victoria,
And Paul.
and you're next.
Ivan, Mr. Chair, I'm really sorry. This is not related to the current conversation, but someone has asked me to get the Zoom meeting ID because they want to call in to the meeting and it's not published.
Do we have that information?
Probably on the. Oh, hold on.
Okay, we're checking on that, Victoria. If we can,
Probably on the agenda of the website.
could we just announce that and you could pass it on? Is that the way
I
we
can
would
send it to.
attempt that?
If Jonathan wants to text it to me, then I can pass it along.
I'll do that.
Okay, that's what we'll do. Thank you.
Thank you.
Paul. Yes, please. That's only so the people in Zoom can hear you. There's a microphone.
I'm going to sit here and so I can
Okay.
check your questions too.
So my question is, in your last statement in your report, you state that if the town does nothing, that it would opt to improve the Green Mountain Estates pump station for 400,000. Can you elaborate on that?
So if there's no extension, right now the town is planning on some kind of short-term improvements to the Green Mountain Pump Station. Just to keep it operational and Eric not have to get into it every day. If the extension is not done, there would need to be some more long-term improvements to the pump station.
Which is the 400K.
Yes.
Okay, second question. I've got a few. Does that improvement only cover the capacity of what's existing, or in your study, did you add other capacity to that improvement for 400,000?
So I didn't add anything to it, although I have recently been asked about that, about what the actual capacity is there. And I haven't had a chance to look into it yet, but I'm looking into what the ability is to expand
Okay,
with what's already there.
so if I submitted a wastewater permit application to the town tomorrow, on a property that's adjacent that pump station. And now that it's town property and offered to pay for the upgrade, which I'm doing right now, I'll pay for the upgrade. What would be the outcome of that permit application? Because now there's municipal sewer at that site. Is there an obligation of the town to provide me as a connection fee and user?
I think that question.
Yeah, I mean, that'd be a decision that would be made here, and as the Board of Sewer Commissioners, and of course, we'd need some guidance as to what the capacity is, what the capacity would need to be, and of course, what the cost would be. I mean, it's an interesting offer, but yeah, I Scott, any thoughts on that?
You know, it's too early. We'd have to evaluate it. It sounds reasonable.
It, yeah, on the surface, it sounds reasonable for everybody involved, so, but,
I have a third question, possible statement. If I propose to put workforce housing on this site, which has a capacity of about 78 units, and tie it into the sewer and not needing to go through the Act 250 process because of the express lane process, which I've done in Bennington, I wouldn't need neighborhood input. Does this, how fast could I get that review, Scott?
Without Act 250 requirement review, could be done in a couple months.
Sewer question.
That one, we could focus on it and get an answer to you quickly.
Okay. That's all I have.
So raises another question in the, in all the agreements that we did with the residents of Green Mountain Estates and the estate of Dick and Nadine Hayes, wasn't there an anticipated contribution to go toward the upgrade of that pump station?
As part of the agreement.
Yeah, so that's all part of the moving pieces of this too. There might be funding available to help with that. Because one of the sticking points was with the people that live there, yeah, well, if you're going to abandon the pump station, why would we pay to upgrade it as part of this? And we just don't know what direction we're going at this point. But it sounds like that would all mesh quite well with what you're proposing. My expectation would be, I mean, we had a proposal years ago to develop the piece across from the bank and the post office property. And they were going to gravity feed down to that pump station, upgrade it, and pump up to Lincoln Avenue and have Lincoln Avenue pump down to the plant. That all fell through, but there's been a lot of, I mean, we were pretty excited about that too, because it replaced that pump station. But yeah, follow up. Good conversation.
Okay. I neglected to mention that there's a permitted 21 unit development on the property that I represent. And is that the same one you're speaking of?
It very well could be, yeah.
Across from the Hayes Green Mountain Estates. So one of my thoughts is in that permit, there's no expiration, although I seem to have a hard time finding an expiration clause in any of the zoning permits in the town. So technically, unless you can tell me otherwise, the permit hasn't expired. And it's contingent on getting a wastewater permit from the town to connect.
Yeah, well, that's exactly what the application.
It's 21 units from 2006 is the permit or somewhere in there.
Part of the, yeah, that seems about right. Part of the complication to that was we didn't own the pump station.
No, I totally understand.
That's kind of how that fell apart, was we couldn't commit a part of the system that we didn't own.
That's right. So multi-part of a pie idea, but workforce housing, sewer station improvement, and a private developer that's willing to actually solve those 2 or 3 things. I'll leave it at that. You guys can get back to me.
But that would leave two pump stations in, going in the
I mean,
future, because you'd improve that, right?
That pump station,
There's always gonna be-
that might change the picture. For what we choose to do with the rest of Richfield Road, if we had an upgraded pump station
Right.
there.
I have a,
Can I
And-
ask it?
And we, in 2006, when we were discussing this, a lot of the discussion was around, well, if the gravel pit, Hayes gravel pit gets developed, that pump station should be sized to collect all of that also. So,
That was gonna be my fifth.
there's nothing new going on here. These conversations have all taken place before. Sometimes I can't remember.
18 years.
When you've been here 100 years, like I have.
I'll remind you, it's been 10 years since I've been on the committee for the housing, identifying housing properties around town which all happen to be the same ones you figured out in the last few months, which is kind of humorous. And then 2017 was when you decided that the most critical thing to do in town was put the sewer main down Richville to save the wells, right, Mr. Narras? But here we are 7 years later, and we put a sewer main up Main Street for I don't know what reason. But we still don't have the sewer main. My fifth comment or question is going to be, the town has a very precious asset in 60 acres that is not collecting any tax revenue. And it's in the Aquifer Protection Overlay. And this would seem like a very good project to get a larger scale developer to front the $6 million cost to bring the sewer out to all of these underserved communities, which I've been saying for years now, it seems. Is there any thought on that relative to making that happen?
Just express the thought.
I said it back in the O'Keefe era.
Yeah.
But it went to deaf ears. And we bought the property that we granted the town access over our property after spending about $25,000 to battle the town on legal access. And we just said, you know what, we're good to give it to you guys, even though we don't believe it's the right way to do it. So we're there, it's ready, and willing, and I think it's a great idea to pursue that, but 6 million is a big number. So happy to
Very
continue
good.
the conversation.
Is the 21 units and the 78 units two separate projects or?
No, we just overlaid 78 over the 21 because the 21 was high-end condo units that
Okay.
didn't seem appropriate.
Just for my calculations.
Yeah, happy to give you those plans.
Thank you.
I mean, we have our hands up here.
Victoria.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, my question is, what is the likelihood that we are going to have to upgrade the, I just forgot the name, but like where all the sewer ends up in the treatment area? What is the likelihood that the town is going to have to upgrade that system?
But it's funny you ask.
No, it's not funny.
Well, I'll say it's germane that you ask. Many of you might remember that back in the 1980s, we had a real estate boom. And we were informed by the state that our sewer plant was at maximum capacity and that we couldn't have any more construction here in town that anticipated having sewer collection associated with it. At that point in time, we put a moratorium on any further development townwide until we could figure out what was going on. And then through certain projects actually coming online, we found out there were some allocations that were double counted. And what their decision was based on was actual usage plus allocations that had been given to new development. Some of those were counted twice as projects came online, as is usually the norm. Actual usage was half of what the engineering projections were, and it's built that way on purpose. Anyways, long story short was that we got half of our plant back. It turned out we weren't quite up to 50% capacity. We weren't over 100%. So at that point in time, we put a plan in effect that said we looked at what the cost would be to going to the next level of treatment, which would be tertiary treatment, the third level. And we, based on engineering estimates as to what the upgrade would cost, we said the rest of this plant that we allocate out, the allocation fee collectively will cover the cost of going to tertiary treatment on the plant. Of course, that we haven't even come anywhere near close to that. And Eric could give us the numbers as to where we are with capacity. To answer your question, we have the capacity to handle all the development. And I think Chrissy looked into this probably. We do have the capacity of the plant to handle all of this projected development if it becomes a reality. Long-winded answer, but there's a lot of history to it.
Can I add to I really appreciate your explanation because I do remember some of that back and forth over the years about the treatment's capacity and I couldn't remember it. But also there's conversations about building a new middle school, which would increase possibly in Manchester, adding on middle school students from other middle schools in the area. So I think while we're having this conversation, we should also think about the other possible developments that may be happening.
Yes, good point. I'm not aware of that particular suggestion, but it makes sense that it might be happening.
I don't know what we talk about water capacity. I don't know what the school capacity is for a developer who could afford to do $6 million worth of sewer. We haven't even talked about the other ramifications, favorite word, which might affect the school and population of students, things like, and then all the other infrastructure costs that might come from something like that. It would be great to fund it that way, but do we have capacity for that kind of increase in numbers?
Well, I would, sorry.
I know that the housing.
I would say
task
on,
force
yeah, I
is
would say
looking at
on
that.
school populations though. I mean, when I know, granted, we have Maple Street School now, which is much larger, didn't exist 30 years ago. But the school population of MEMS is, I think, 60% of what it was 25, 30 years ago. So we've kind of varied it out quite a bit. Whether or not that may increase.
The
I mean,
BBA is probably 4 times the
BBA's
size.
BBA was 400 when I was there. It's now 750.
Yeah.
So yeah, there are definitely some changes.
Before we go here, did anybody else want to speak to this issue? Oh, I thought Mark was putting his hand up. Go ahead, Paul.
I have an answer to that, Greg.
I
So
mean, I do like the idea, but I wonder about all that other.
larger scale Vermont, I'm on a board called the Vermont Futures Board. And we have a study coming out that we've worked on for about 8 years, coming out in a month after the election. We don't want to disrupt any political situations. And it's going to tell you where, with this housing quote crisis we have, the actual housing units should probably go when considering municipal infrastructure capacity, whether or not the actual community wants it based on zoning permits that have been denied for housing developments in the state. We've analyzed every town. And whether or not there's actually a need for workforce based on the quality of the workforce, and whether or not hospitals, schools, and fire departments can handle those new developments. So although we're saying we want to bring 802,000 people total to the state population, and that we need, what's the number, 5,000, 50,000 units? I can't remember that we're talking about.
36,000 units, right?
Somewhere in the middle there, right? What towns those should go in? And we've also layered in a NIMBY map, where we have communities in the state that, although they say and have workforce housing initiatives that they want to do housing, they actually don't, and they just churn. So that's coming out in a month, which I encourage the town to review it. It's very neat.
Looking forward to it. Thank you.
That's actually great, yeah. That'll be interesting.
I want to remind everybody that Manchester is a regional hub. We provide employment, education, goods and services, medical services, and everything else that goes along with it to the surrounding towns. So it's reasonable to assume that Manchester would be a hub for other considerations, and education being one of those, which we already are. But the regionalization of education helps with that, because the region, which is made up of a hub and surrounding smaller towns, would share the burden of providing education as it expands in the region. Anyways, that's all discussion for another time. We're talking about sewer here. I do like your offer, and we will have some serious discussions here to see how that meshes with what ultimately we need to do. But yours is an immediate need, which offers an immediate solution. So I appreciate that. Other thoughts on the report? Any thoughts on the project? Thank you, Chrissy.
Thanks, Chrissy. That's a lot of.
Thank you.
Patience.
Good night, everyone.
No.
Out the door she went.
So this is a draft report that we have, that once that is finished, it will be available.
It's a 90% report,
Will
so
it be available online for people to look at? Okay.
Okay, getting back to the agenda. Got the three chiefs here.
But we have a building committee.
We're gonna have you step up
We have a
here.
building committee.
Okay.
and Bill's in charge.
All right.
That was the
Bill, are you the building committee?
I got pushed to the forefront. So at one of our meetings in the spring, the idea was floated to possibly try to build a garage for additional storage. The firehouse, I guess, was built for 50 years worth of service and expansion, and we're probably about 3 years out, and we're full. We've had the fortune through donations and fundraising that we purchased a couple trailers that have side-by-sides and brush fire equipment, rescue equipment in them. Each of those is over $40,000 worth of equipment. It sits in the parking lot. One, it's not in a good spot, and two, it would last longer and be more protected if we put it in the building. So the membership asked us to form a committee. We started in the spring. Started to get some prices. It kind of fell away. We had other things going on. So it's been rejuvenated. We're proposing, we've marked out over there a footprint, which isn't like a surveyor would do it, but we marked out the size of the building that we're looking to put, which would be on the far side of the Public Safety Center to the north of the landing zone for the helicopter. We're looking to put a building that's 48 feet wide by 30 feet deep with a 10-foot pad out the back with a shed roof. It'd be 3 bays, doors would be 12 feet wide, 10 feet high. Initially, we had talked about a concrete pad, but if you do that and you don't build it for a building, we move forward. There's a discussion within the firehouse about just a pad, but it moved from that to a building. So what we're looking at is we're looking to see if the town would entertain us building a building at the public safety facility using monies from the Firemen's Association and fundraising. We're projecting probably by the time it'd be all said and done, we're probably into $100,000. And we've discussed 50,000 out of the monies we have at this time and trying to raise the additional 50,000. You know, there's things around that we could store there that are in the firehouse that it's just things we don't use all the time, but it's good that we have them, but they don't need to be hanging around in the main station. We also have over at the police department, when you drive over the PD parks, they've got all kinds of stuff there, tires and other stuff. They have barricades and stuff that sit outside in their gated area that we've discussed it. We'd be more than willing to have them store those kind of things in our new building to protect them, and then we would all have access. So basically what we're just asking is if we should move forward as a department with this, if there's any chance that there may be approvals for this. Before we try to go to the permitting process, because it's the town's land.
It will be on a slab or won't be on a.
It'll be on an Alaskan slab. So full foundation.
Okay.
We have two separate companies. We revised the size and made it slightly smaller, but increased the concrete pad out the back. One is Morton Buildings, which is a wood frame, metal clad building. We've upgraded insulation in a full slab. The other is American Steel, which is steel frame metal clad, insulated. So we're waiting on revised pricing on that because we've changed the specs.
Is the Martin building a building?
It's a pole barn.
Yeah.
It's a pole barn. Yep, and it would be fully insulated. So we already have somebody that's offered to put radiant floor.
I was gonna say, if you're
Heating.
gonna pour a pad, at least put the tubing in.
We haven't even started fundraising or anything. We've had somebody offered to put the tubing in, so we could do that in the future as a donation.
Yeah, it's
So,
cheap to put in, and even if you don't use it,
right,
at some point.
right away, and the thoughts are if we raise more money than we need, well, then maybe we
Yeah.
if you specify that money goes in a fund towards that building
Stuff in
or
a
to buy
building,
town, so we just don't put it into our
don't
general.
control that base temperature, you get a lot of condensation, so.
Bill, can you just talk about the setbacks a little bit in terms of the landing pad? Do you feel comfortable?
So the LifeNet, Air Methods, they're all good with that. We've discussed that with them. They have no problems. The builders of the structure have no problems with the setback there. And we've actually, the back of the structure would be more than 15 feet away from the property line. We moved it
No light
forward a
interference.
little bit.
Okay, no lighting interference or anything like that? Like, you know how they were concerned about like a tower light impeding their ability to land?
Oh, no, because this is only a single story structure, so it'd be 10 feet on the sides and then it's a peaked roof.
Yeah.
But that's 24 feet away from the edge of the building. So, and if you guys want to go over and look during the day, we've marked it out. But what we've done is normally the helicopter will come in and follow Jeff Williams Way directly in
Okay.
as they're landing. But depending on the prevailing winds, sometimes they will come in along the west side of the building. This new structure is set back far enough that it doesn't impede the flight path. And we did mark it out over there. So if somebody who just wants to peruse during the daylight hours, you could get an idea where we're looking to locate this.
Like a good idea.
Sounds like a really good idea.
Sounds like a great idea. I was just looking at Homestead's new Morton buildings. Is that sort of those Homestead landscaping indoors?
Oh, yeah, they're beautiful.
Yeah.
So ours is none that fancy.
You don't have the A.
Morton would color, the panels so they match the existing public safety center.
Yeah.
The
The shed roof is just one angle.
It's a peaked roof.
Oh, it's
Peaked
up.
roof.
All right.
So it will shed away for both sides and not over
Okay.
the bay door.
Right, yeah. Yeah,
They have a standard pitch, with their trusses that it is, to take the snow.
And the American Steel may be more money, but the gentleman that represents him has offered to do all the excavation work at his cost. So that may be a little more expensive building, but we have to weigh the overall, and we're not there yet. But before we try to go further,
You have a pancake breakfast and barn raising all on the same day?
I think this would be separate from our pancake breakfast and the golf tournament. This would be a special fundraiser.
So you're dealing with Norton out of Castleton?
Yes. Yes.
You like the idea?
Want to motion on this? Do we need a
I
motion?
don't think there's anything to really
They're gonna find.
move on right now. We're looking for
No,
consensus, kind of.
they just wanted a little bit of consensus before they came forward with
Yeah.
some
I'm
specifics.
very supportive of the effort, and as long as the details work out as far as the traffic flow and air for the helicopter and all that,
Well, it'll actually be better because it will move those trailers out of the path of plowing snow. And we're proposing to plow, pave that area into it and probably over to the heliport. So there'd be a slightly larger area to pave, but it'd be easier to get snow away from the travel way around the public safety center.
Other things, we have propane tanks stored on the outside of the building with barricades in front of them. I would alleviate them, we'll put the propane tanks that we use for various, only behind the building on the lean-to side of the building, is back. on the
where you got the shed roof.
Shed roof on the back.
Where the pad, yeah.
Is that butt up next to the rink?
It abuts the, disc golf.
Yeah, okay.
Paul? Yes, I do.
Sorry.
Come on up, brother.
I can hear you.
Can I recommend that you consider including this building for public safety to be also a communications tower location and add all of your communication devices that you need, as well as a cell phone tower for the community?
I appreciate that,
Close to the lane.
but not
Landing.
not the right spot for the landing zone. If you go and look at where our existing tower is, it's not near that close and not as high as a cellular tower. This building is even closer. And that is a problem with the flight path for them coming in. We actually had concerns with, and it never came to be, concerns with the initial tower that was proposed at Hunter Park Riley Rink, because it was closer than the second tower that was proposed. And with our flight path, and it never proceeded any further, and we don't have any say really. Well, we have say, but the state can do whatever they want in the end. I've never heard anything else about it, but we had aired our concerns to the proximity of the landing zone for the helicopter.
The Firefighters Association put the light on the towers for all the radio communications also, to make it safe.
Thank you.
So,
Any other comments?
I agree with you.
It just, I see heads nodding all the way around,
All
so.
right, well, we will proceed and we will try to get some more concrete information and we will meet you again.
Yeah, great.
Thank you.
thank you,
Bill.
Thanks.
Thanks, Billy.
Keep it going.
Okay.
You know how to find it.
I do.
Here, see that.
The board's told me to pay for parking applications. Number 8.
Okay, I just spoke 15 minutes ago about a moratorium that a townwide moratorium. What we're looking at here this evening is establishing a much more narrow moratorium to allow the planning commission to adjust the language in the Manchester Land Use and Development Ordinance relative to pay for parking applications in the town core. This was a program that we put in place in anticipation of changes of use to the buildings on Main Street, which were built prior to the need for parking. And under our existing ordinance, really nothing could happen with any of those buildings without something to address the need for parking to support the new activity there. We put in place an ordinance that allowed the applicant to make a contribution to a parking fund. If they had a shortage of parking, if it amounted to a number of dollars per parking space, and the town would approve that, and they'd be allowed to build, and the town would take that money to address parking in the downtown. It worked well in the past to allow the old Factory Point Bank building to be developed. And the money that was generated through the parking shortage that came to the town was used to upgrade the municipally owned and shared parking behind Walgreens. So it was a program that worked well. What we did not anticipate was buildings being torn down and brand new construction ground up. And the potential for applicants to come in and apply for deficit parking in a ground up development. So the planning commission is working on this, and in the meantime, they've asked us to put a moratorium on place as far as pay for parking until we can get this in place. Does that summarize it, Scott?
It does, and you have a map in front of you showing the two different districts. The larger one is what we have currently. The payment in lieu of parking is within that town core. And the new proposed language is further down, showing the smaller district, which is the downtown zoning district. So they're working on developing language similar to what's in front of you for that, but they need to bring that to you for approval anyways. In the meantime, you know, we did have a recent applicant come through where Sam's Pizza used to be, and we have new development going on. And so they use the town core map to fit into that category. And so in the meantime, I know the board has thought it might be best to put a moratorium on future applications.
My recollection, and I haven't done this in 40 years, is that if you put a moratorium in place, if the board votes to put a moratorium in place, it is immediate.
Correct.
Because obviously you're addressing an immediate need. So,
Right. And there's public hearings that are developing with the planning commission anyway, so
Yeah.
the public has an opportunity. Plus, when you guys receive it eventually from the planning commission, you would have input from the public then also.
Can I make a suggestion? When the planning commission's looking at this, I think that they were using kind of a stagnant number and it was kind of, we hadn't updated it for years. And I don't know, it was based on kind of,
The payment part of it?
the per space
Yeah.
payment.
Yeah.
and so I'm not a fan of that. I think it has to be either, you know, linked to inflation or linked to something that kind of.
When we first established that fee, we went to several sources to try to figure out what it would cost to create a parking space. I mean, you don't create a parking space, but if you did anywhere from a small lot to a large lot, what does it cost to generate parking spaces? We got a number. On average, this is what it costs. That became the fee, but it never got upgraded over time, and we've wound up doling out parking spaces for a number that no longer applied. So I think we should look at that, and it should be, at the very least,
Replacement
have an
cost or-
escalator.
Yeah.
But perhaps should be revisited on a regular basis to see what it costs to create a parking space.
Is that something that the policy we set, I mean, ultimately the policy we set by the select board, but is that something that we would set the initial policy as well? The planning commission wouldn't necessarily be.
That all falls under the purview of the select board as far as the agreement itself and the
Okay.
price paid.
I mean, you'll remember when the Greek pizza people came,
They
they did have an inflator built in there and
were, yeah,
the select board chose to just keep it as is.
some of the select board.
Some,
No, I think revisiting anything that we have that's kind of been a fixed price for a long period of time, you know, whether it's rents
And-
or
yeah.
fees, we should always just, as a rule of practice, be
Yes,
revisiting it, just.
anything that can take the gray area out of cost adjustments so that we don't have to go into the weeds. There's a clear expectation that this is what to expect when you want to do business.
I agree with that. Also, we need to recognize that there's already a parking crunch in that area, and that because we approved this with a parking deficit, whether they paid us or not, it's going to increase that parking crunch for their.
and the brewery is gonna come online
Yeah.
at some point too.
And
That's been
coming
online for years now.
If the town is going to continue to approve deficit parking and get paid to do that, then we have to provide the solution.
Right.
And I'm going to tell you that the solution is way more expensive than what we're charged.
I 100% agree with
All
that.
right, well, I'll relay that message to the planning commission.
Yes. Mr. Nora.
I appreciate the concept of reducing the area where this is available. But I would suggest if you're doing an interim zoning bylaw, which I guess is what you're talking about here, the interim zoning bylaw ought to be to put all of 9.66 off the table. All payment in lieu of parking.
Yeah.
Because you're confining it to the downtown, but that area is even harder to find a parking space in. And this whole concept really put the responsibility on the town to provide the parking space to benefit somebody. So instead of limiting it to the downtown, I suggest you eliminate it all until you can work out a workable way of dealing with the problem overall.
Yeah, and
This made sense when the town owned a parking lot downtown, but it doesn't make sense now.
The moratorium would be for all, correct?
Well,
Yeah, the moratorium
that's what Mike's saying.
would be for 9.66.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
So the planning commission was gonna come back to us with language. and
I think we were saying, I think it was, we were saying for all until we,
Well, this indicates that
oh,
the
well,
top part is the existing
Right.
and the proposed is suggesting that it should be eliminate 9.6.
yeah, what,
I don't think that's.
this is the
yeah,
proposed, this is the proposed change that the planning commission is working on to the
Right,
bylaw.
yeah,
It doesn't reference to what we're doing with a moratorium.
the
The
moratorium.
expectation with the moratorium would be to put a hold on all, payment in lieu of
Right.
parking until,
That was a
until the
little
planning commission
premature.
can formalize this language.
But that is what they're working on.
So are you looking for a motion?
It's still an issue.
Oh, yeah.
If they're thinking of that as the next step.
Yeah, and I think going to that meeting
But there'll be a
too.
process.
Yeah,
I don't think we're looking, we're not looking at an interim bylaw, are we? We're
No.
looking at a bylaw change, so it's gonna go.
I think they threw that proposed,
A moratorium is an interim.
Okay. That was the other point
Yeah.
but the moratorium that we're talking about is very simply to put a moratorium on all payment in lieu of parking until the planning commission works this out. That's what we're discussing.
At the town core.
Okay, so I think we're on the same.
I appreciate
wavelength.
that. I hope the message is clear to the planning commission.
We'll make sure that it is. Thank you, Mike. So the process, which Mike has just alluded to, is the process to put a moratorium in place. Is that in fact an interim bylaw?
it would be, sure. Yep.
And again, remind us of the process that it takes to put an interim bylaw in effect.
Well, I think you can put one together because we've warned it as a possibility tonight.
Mhm.
So I think you could approve one tonight. And there's no language involved.
Yep.
So I don't know if you want to set a time extension limit for this or just
Well, I don't think we
until,
moratorium until some language is in place from the planning commission. So I think that would be the release point was,
do you say contingent on the?
the only reason I mention that is because, I mean, the planning commission struggled to get those 24 or 26 ones together that were supposed to be the low hanging fruit. So I just, maybe we want to set some sort of time limit and then it could be reviewed and extended if needed.
Keeping them not
That might give
ending.
them something to swing at.
You could vote to eliminate the interim bylaw at any.
true, but it'd be nice to put some kind of expectation on there.
Yeah.
What do you think it takes to get through this process? 6 months?
I would go 90 days.
90 days?
Move it right up to the top of their list.
Have a lot of faith.
I mean, they've got 3 meetings by the end of the year though.
They've already have it scheduled in the next meeting.
Yeah.
For the first discussion, so.
I mean, to me, it seems like this is what they're proposing is a relatively simple approach. I have to
They could package it with some
The-
complicated stuff though, and then it would come back to us and we'd have to.
I may, and I get this board's thoughts on this, is insert some sort of language that this is not meant to be applied to ground up new construction. That it's more geared toward use of existing structures and buildings that
So-
pre-exist the zoning.
You're saying the parking is more geared towards existing. The pay for parking. is-
Pay for parking.
Yeah, right.
Um,
And not for ground up.
I mean, if somebody came in, if somebody bought Manchester Main Street, both sides of the road, leveled all those buildings and built something new from the ground up, we'd expect them to provide some kind of parking. It would be a parking garage. But in order to utilize those existing buildings, they cannot have the on-site parking that's required for them to develop that. That's where this all came from. And so that needs to be somehow expressed in the ordinance. So this is designed, that this is the intent, is to use this for existing structures in order for them to continue to be used in the downtown, where they can make a payment in lieu of park.
But you could also have the financial piece of it be the mechanism that controls the demand, right? So like, if you said that there's a finite amount of spots that we're willing to allocate for any future development, and the price of these spots is based on, you know,
Building a parking garage.
I mean, yeah,
Downtown Manchester.
then I don't think people would be looking to build things that aren't, you know, within the existing footprint or.
I just, if you look at anything on Main Street, they live on the footprint of the building.
Yeah.
There's no place for parking unless it's provided by the town. The parallel parking on the north side, the angle parking on the south side, and where you turn and come through town is all town-owned parking. All the parking down there is town.
So I mean, tonight, you're just addressing the moratorium, so I would finish that job, and then we can put on another agenda the message you want to convey to the planning
You
commission.
could just go to a meeting at the
But in-
planning.
Either or, right.
I like it. Sounds good to me. So, simple motion.
Motion to establish a moratorium on pay for parking applications in the town core for 90 days.
With, let's include. I don't want to direct you how to make your motion, but I am.
Pending the
Planning Commission,
planning commission sending us an updated amendment to the language in their existing ordinances.
okay,
That was simple.
got that.
I'll get it.
And it's seconded by Jan. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Have a moratorium on pay for park. Payment in lieu of park. Agenda item number 9 is the minor changes to the town's personnel policy.
So you have in your packets some changes that we're proposing tonight. Just to remind you, we first approved this in April 16th, and we amended it a few weeks later on May 7th. This document is meant to be an ever-changing and living document. As the rules and needs change, we have to come back to you with possible changes. So it's not something to put in place and leave for 10 years. And so tonight, we've got highlighted the changes that we want to include. We're also including the addendum G, which we somehow got left behind when we approved the new one from the last one. Addendum G just pertains to CDL licenses and drivers and their testing and those type of things. So we didn't, when we approved the new one, we didn't have that in there. So we just got to add that
I
back.
don't think, Scott, we have this, that document. We
Are
have,
you missing the addendum G?
Yeah.
Okay.
we're missing what the change that you're talking about. So
Just have to read it to us.
Okay. Do you have the 3 pages from, you have nothing,
no, we got
nada.
just the road name, the cold storage for the
Okay.
fire. Great.
So I'll go over quickly. It's very, very simple. On page 5, there's a uniform section. So we pay full-time employees of the Department of Public Works and the Water and Sewer Departments to have uniforms supplied and cleaned by the town and reimbursed up to, and that number was $100 each fiscal year for work safety boots, OSHA-approved work safety boots. Well, those cost more than $100 now. So what's been happening is our employees have to kick in $80 when they get new boots, so they tend not to get new boots. So we're bumping that up to 200. If they want to get something really fancy, that's more than 200, they can pay the difference. So that was one simple one. Then on page 13.
Is that annual?
Yes. Yeah. Page 13, under eligibility for benefits and workplace injury. This is regards to workers' comp. And it says employees injured while performing their duties shall immediately, that's a new word, notify their supervisor. And then we've added this language. Employees must first complete a first report of injury form and submit it to Human Resources within 72 hours. With any injury that requires first aid, the employee will be seen by a healthcare provider within 24 hours. A healthcare provider must provide the employee with a written return to work document and any needed restrictions. The employee must provide the return to work document to Human Resources prior to returning to regular work activity. So we didn't have all of that in there before. It really fits. VLCT has been on our case in every town, not just us. But after an injury, you're supposed to have it to them in 24 hours, first report. And we haven't been getting those. It's slowly coming. So we need to have it in our personnel policy. So that's why we inserted that. And it does address a little bit more. It says employees covered by workers' insurance, if their injury arises out of and is in course of employment, the town shall continue health insurance coverage with the employee being responsible for regular contribution rates and deductibles. Employees may use sick and vacation time to supplement the difference between the workers' comp pay and their net pay. So that gives them the opportunity to use their sick time and vacation time if they want to cover that small amount of coverage that's required. And finally, on page 19, which is calculating overtime in a standard work week, the standard for calculating overtime or comp time is based on a single work week and cannot be an average of hours worked over 2 or more weeks as stated in the Vermont Department of Labor wage and hour laws. So when we redid the personnel policy, we based everything on 80 hours, and we do payroll on 80 hours every 2 weeks. But what was happening is people weren't including sick time because they worked other hours that second week, and so they made up for it. But the state law doesn't allow us to do that, so we have to go by a single week at a time. So we've added, those were the only changes besides addendum G.
Difficult to track?
No.
2 weeks as opposed to 1 week? I mean, since we pay every other week.
It really isn't.
Okay.
You know, and we've got some good systems set in place between our network system and some spreadsheets that we utilize to make sure that.
So if an employee, if it's a 40-hour week and the employee works 30 hours this week.
Yeah.
And works 50 hours next week,
Mhm.
the way we're doing it right now, that would average out to 80 hours over the 2 weeks. But
Right.
now we pay them regular time for the 30,
Yep.
but we have to pay 10 hours of overtime on the 50.
Well, yes, that is.
Yeah, okay. Just
Yep,
to make
so
up
they'll
the
have to
difference.
use some kind of PTO
Yeah.
to make up for that.
No,
10 hours.
Yeah.
Required to pay anybody over 40 hours,
overtime.
not or comp time.
Okay, got it.
And like I said, the addendum G was just drug and alcohol policy for CMV, commercial motor vehicle operators.
I had updated in 2020, our last policy that we had a policy in there from, that was older. So we've updated all of that information to be current.
Does it make more sense to just simply reference state guidelines rather than have it insert the language inserted and that way, if it changes at the state level, it automatically changes in our policy, whether we
VLCT
address it or not?
recommended, that we do it this way, create something that was specific to, our town.
Okay.
And the way we do things.
Like we do in our planning, like right? Because if changes in the state guidelines for certain things, we have to update our plan, our zoning.
We're just gonna have to do a better job of updating it.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, this is good. You've done it 3 times since we first.
There you go.
I'll like to motion that we approve the changes as stated to the town's personnel policy.
Second.
Seconded by Jan. Discussion, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Unanimous, it's done.
There is a document for you to sign. There's a tab up there that each of you should sign the change in front of you.
Oh, I have it here.
Yeah, you do, because I don't.
You can do it after if you want.
Okay, yeah, see it, got it. Hear that? Scott, we're down to town manager updates.
Okay, just got a few things. Grace Initiative, we met with Yvonne last meeting, remember, when we talked about the county courthouse. So Luke Gordon's put together a lease for her now, and so basically she's gonna lease 2 office spaces in there, along with a bathroom. If there's any interaction with the village, they will have first priority to the main room, courtroom. And so I just wanted to let you know about that. I don't need your approval or anything for that. I just wanted to keep you up to date because she did come in last week and talk about that. We've been doing some line striping. We're waiting for the,
Off the
Yeah.
courthouse lease, is there are they paying for that?
it will.
Yeah, there's
I
a
think it's $600.
$600. I glanced at the document.
Not much. That pays those rents too.
That's a good deal for them.
But it's better than nothing, which is what we had last winter.
Right.
For expenses.
Yeah.
Killers.
They do good work,
They do.
Yes.
do good things. We should not be.
But we have to, I mean, we should charge.
What is the,
We have to charge.
you know, what the square footage?
Charge the village of Manchester.
I rented about 1,000 square feet for about $1,200.
Yeah.
On Richville, so that's. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, we didn't want to give a market rate. I mean, it's a
I get it.
community benefit.
It's nice that the building's being used.
Yes.
So striping, we're waiting for the state vendors to come in and do North Road and Barnumville Road. And Jeff's been after them. It's just they operate in their own schedule and they came close to town before and then left. So we're hoping when they do Dorset, Morse Hill Road, I think it's just been paved, so they're gonna do that. But we did hire a third party to do the fog lines on West Road. So you might see those in place now.
Yes, you do.
So,
Good.
Yeah.
Also, they did stripe all the way up to Bromley. So that those lines in the middle are now back.
okay, yeah, that spot where they came together.
Crazy.
Yeah. So anyways, we're expecting them to come back through town here
Into the on.
before the end of the season.
Great.
One final update on the Bourne Brook floodplain grant application. So this is the hazard mitigation grant program that we talked about. And the select board actually earmarked $200,000, I think, of the ARPA money towards this project. So it's an ongoing process. The application, the state was worried they weren't going to get enough applications, so they kind of went out and drummed up business. So now they have over 700 applications.
Jesus.
But luckily for us, there's only 30 of those are floodplain restorations, which is what this one would fall under. And out of those 30, 10 to 20 will be probably kicked out. So we're probably going to be competing about 10 for floodplain restoration. And ours looks pretty good at the moment because we're ahead of the other towns because we had that study done. Yeah, thanks to the North Star. And so anyways, just they're doing a prioritizing list right now, and that'll be done the next several weeks. And then we'll know more by the end of October, early November. If we make the cut, it'll go to FEMA, and FEMA will give us their approval and everybody else throughout the state in the spring. So that's the time frame on this project. But it's moving along pretty well. We're in really good shape. We've gotten additional updated information from North Star and Nikki Buck, who actually left North Star, is in another company, but she's still working with us. And so we're really in good shape, I think, as far as this application goes. That's all I have.
I have a little update.
Good.
I got a nice note from Special Olympics people that did the coin drop. And they raised $2,300.
Nice.
Amazing.
And I don't think it was that bad. I drove through it a couple of times. It didn't seem, we had, one of our police officers was there. Right at like kind of near Ben and Jerry's.
Yeah.
Seemed good.
Cool.
Was
Did any-
most of the collection when the light was red and then they would,
I don't know.
I imagine, they weren't stopping traffic.
No, I mean, it was, you know, it was a busy town weekend anyway, so I feel like everything was like slowed down and,
Yeah,
you know, they were
We're
having
gonna be
fun
sitting
and-
there anyways.
Yeah, it was,
they were very happy with
Yeah.
the results.
Good.
yeah, so,
Cool.
Hopefully this won't encourage others.
I know, yeah, but it was a good thing for them.
Right. Any other business?
Move to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Hi.
We are adjourned. Our next meeting is October 15th.
Is it for sure?
Check your calendars, I'm watching.
Chairman, as a former chairman of the planning commission, you're aware that come May, the town plan expires.
It's gonna-
You, yeah,
Thanks.
really?
Not yet.
Yeah. Once the